and this is Lit Happens, your celebration of the literary arts here in Saskatchewan. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Jerry Hammersmith. Now, Jerry is a writer, an educator, a consultant, and former politician. He was an MLA representing Prince Albert from 1978 to 1983. His recently released book is called Letters to Mary Susan, From Her Outlaw Father. Jerry, welcome to Lit Happens.
Thank you.
So first off, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. And have you been writing for your whole life, or is this something that you just found in recent years?
I have not written professionally for my whole life, but I've done a lot of writing. I did a lot of writing when I was a bureaucrat. Wrote a lot of papers when I was a university prof. I taught at universities in Saskatchewan and New Zealand, and occasionally did writing along with that, but this is the first fiction that I've written.
And this is a special kind of fiction. This is historical fiction.
Right.
So that means it's not just, the story isn't just off the top of your head. This is something you had to research then.
Two things. Yes, it had to be researched, but the thing is to work a fiction into history, and the history has to be credible. So I think it is.
Well, and it's an interesting period in the history of the Plains, really.
Well, partly. The story starts in Missouri and in the American Civil War, and in a time known as the Big Muddy Time. You've heard of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Mm-hmm. So this story works through Montana when Butch Cassidy was active, and it has much of the Big Muddy and Big Muddy Outlaws in it, and Big Muddy outlawry. And the main person in the book eventually decides to escape from Montana and from the Big Muddy, and escapes into Canada just ahead of a shooting posse, and had decided before coming into Canada that he was going to be a homesteader, because he had heard of other outlaws who had escaped into Canada and homesteaded, and once they had a homestead proven up and signed out, they were declared Canadian citizens. So they not only started a new life, but they escaped the pursuit of the American law. And the main person in this book did homestead in northeastern Saskatchewan. Where he homesteaded was a half mile from the first school that my father ever attended.
Wow.
So I had a lot of stories about this childhood hero of my father's that I worked into, but then I did a lot of historical research, because the stories had to fit, and the history had to be right, and hopefully it is.
Well, and that's really wonderful. It's a story that sort of has been passed through the generations then to you, and were these stories that you've passed on, not just through the book, but in telling as well to your friends and family members over the years?
Of course, I didn't do a lot of verbal telling of the stories, but in 2002, I was doing a summer school in Alaska, and I took my father to Alaska with me, and we did a lot of talking about Jim Howard, who is the main character in this book. And that made me determined and convinced that I could do a historical fiction novel around these stories of my dad's childhood hero.
And then it's called Letters to Mary Susan. So explain that. How is that form taken in this book?
Well, the main character, and I did this through historical research, appears in the novel first as Jesse James. And what the novel makes the assassination of Jesse James that most of us knew about, makes it a fraudulent assassination from which he escaped. And he worked his way north to Montana, where he fell back into outlawry. And then, but Mary Susan was his daughter, who had been present during the fraudulent assassination. But the hero in this book hasn't seen his daughter for 42 years. And a chaplain in the prison in Prince Albert convinced him that life would be incomplete if he didn't re-establish communication with his daughter. So he started writing to her regularly. And the book is then, chapter by chapter, this old ex-outlaw is reflecting on the life that brought him to this penitentiary. And so each chapter is a different stage in his life, but then at the end of each chapter in the book, he writes a letter to his long-lost daughter that the chaplain has convinced him that he should write to. And her name is Mary Susan. So that's why they're Letters to Mary Susan. And they are part of the story unfolding.
Wonderful. And so this is your first novel, but you've told me that you've been writing poetry lately.
Well, not so much, not only lately. I have a book of poetry that I'm hoping to publish before this year is over, but it begins, I started writing and collecting these poems in the 1960s. So there's a story of my life, the joys and sadness of my life since then.
Wow, that's sort of a memoir in poetry.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably using the word memoir overly generously.
Well, reflections on a life, then.
Sure, yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Well, and so who would be people that would have inspired you with poetry for that many years?
Well, there's a series of people. Usually they were people not of the same gender as me. And so, but not only.
Mm-hmm. And what about other writers? Have you been inspired by other writers, other poets, other people who string words together?
Yeah, I think that certainly inspired by Irving Layton and a number of poets out of the Montreal area, and Leonard Cohen, and my youngest son, who passed away at an early age, used to like comparing me to Leonard Cohen. I think that's overstepping.
Well, there's a love and a dedication and a beauty in that's really wonderful. Yeah. Well, where can people find your book, Jerry?
Well, it's at McNally Robinson in Saskatoon, and it's on Amazon. And if people are being financially cautious, it's available on Smashwords for $4.99 US.
Wonderful.
And,
So
that's available as ebook on Smashwords.
excellent. So there's no excuse for people to, when they're looking for your book? They should be able to find it.
Well, or they can try the web page shared by my wife and I. That is www.twohammers.net.
Ah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Time goes by so fast when we're sitting in these chairs. So thank you for speaking with me today. Thank you for sharing your new book with us. I'm Danica Lorer, and this has been Lit Happens. You can find past episodes by going to YouTube and searching for Shaw TV Saskatoon. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter, or you can email me at danicalorer@gmail.com. Thank you for watching.